Today's conversation, overcoming the burden of disease.
Bishop Ted Roy Powell, Reverend Errol Williams, and Dr. Liz Longsworth, my distinguished colleague, and all organizers and participants in this symposium. It's a tremendous honor for me once again to participate, though I regret very much that I am unable to join you live as a result of sudden developments in my work schedule here in the Caribbean. Before I begin, of course, I wish to ask that we pray for the people, our country folk in St. Vincent and the Grenadines who are in the midst of this terrible volcanic eruption. We send them our blessings. We know that they are a resilient people and they will overcome this specific event. I wish to join with you in bringing attention to the theme of your symposium, overcoming the burden of disease. This concept of disease has deep historical roots, or I should say the word disease has deep historical roots in the two joining concepts of dis and ease, that there is a dis-ease of the body that results in multiple forms of illness. I wish to say something specific to the Caribbean context and its diaspora at this moment when we interrogate the evidence surrounding this dis-ease of our bodies as persons crafted in an historical moment within the context of structures and relationships, and how this historical experience and historical time is impacting very deeply the contemporary moment, the here and now, and the future as expressions of history in the present. I wish to focus at the beginning with what has been described as a contradiction within this contemporary. And the contradiction is that Caribbean folks, everywhere they are stereotyped as highly physical and very healthy bodies, that we are possessed of super physical bodies and super healthy bodies. This stereotype has to do with the narrative around enslavement and how that narrative was constructed in the period of slavery, that our ancestors were brought to the plantations of the New World according to the slave owners, according to the participants in slavery, because we were strong and we could overcome the brutality of excess hard labor and minimum nutrition, that we were cheap to be fed, and that excessive labor could be extracted in short time on minimum nutritional input. And that concept of the black body was framed in the colonial period as part of the justification of the physical brutality of slavery and the physical brutality that followed emancipation into our present time. The stereotype has remained strong. The language has remained powerful, and it is given even greater support in the area of sport and entertainment, and of course the tourism industry, where we are seen as super performers in sport. We possessed of the fastest man, Usain Bolt, the fastest woman, Shelley Ann Fraser-Price, in the world, and that our entertainment culture built around dancehall, Rihanna, and other super physical performers served to confirm the stereotype of our physicality as a people, and therefore logically extended into the notion that we are a super healthy people. All of this, of course, serves, as I have said, to validate the economics of slavery and colonization, and to also project Black people into a concept of the physical, that we are not respected and celebrated for our mental capacity. We are not celebrated and projected for our intellectual engagement. We are stereotyped as workers in a high performance context, a low wage context, a low nutritional context, and a high physical demand context. That is how we have been defined, and these definitions continue to surround the people of the Caribbean. But the truth of the matter is that if we use the marker or the criterion of chronic diseases, that the people of the Caribbean, the Black people of the Caribbean, and increasingly the Indian descendant people of the Caribbean are among the sickest people in the world. Indeed, if we take this marker of chronic diseases, hypertension, type 2 diabetes, and you put them together and you carry out a global per capita distribution, what you will find is that the Black people of the Caribbean are the sickest people on God's earth. How we explain this and why we should explain this are very important for us as a people going forward. The historians and the medical fraternity are currently discussing and debating this phenomenal upsurge in our physical ill health. The historians are clear on the matter. We know that this had a great deal to do with enslavement. We know it had a great deal to do with the broader structures, both physical and ideological, of slavery and colonization. And we know that the Black people of the Caribbean and also the US South have experienced a journey through time that was not only evil, but it has damaged our bodies and our minds. And we are now entering an era where we are demanding the repairing of these circumstances, reparations. Yesterday, we saw the ending of the murder trials surrounding the killing of George Floyd. What we were able to see was that the plantation overseers that had brutalized the African American people followed them from the south to the north and were reconstituted as police officers. So what the plantation overseers had been doing to our people and are still doing to our people in the south, the police officers who have emerged out of that policing culture continued with the practice of taking Black life at will, thereby creating a psychological context, a psychological profile that is accommodating to the malnutrition and the poor physical capacity of our people as a result of poverty, hunger, and malnutrition. So we've had 200 years of this. Our medics have produced a narrative that says it has little to do with history. It has more to do with the present day shifting of our lifestyles and our nutritional processes. That we have of late become addicted to fast food, and we are living a more sedentary life, and therefore cascading into this explosion of diabetes and hypertension. We, the historians, consider this narrative to be simplistic, to be unscientific, and to be lacking proper scientific context and content. We know that our people are generally considered to be addicted to salt and sugar. We know that on the sugar plantations, they were asked to consume what they produce and develop for 200 years a sugar-based diet. We know that, generally speaking, they were fed on salted pork and salted beef and salted fish. So between sugar and the daily consumption of salted meat, they also developed an intolerance to the metabolism surrounding salt and sugar. This is a Caribbean experience. This is an ancient, ongoing Caribbean experience. We know that the Black community in the Caribbean experience what we can describe accurately as genocide. It was indeed genocide. Any process that prevents a people from growing naturally as a result of external interventions and enable them to experience systemic decline, what you are speaking about is genocide. If you take the British, for example, they imported some 1.5 million Africans into their Caribbean colonies. 1.5 million enslaved Africans into their Caribbean colonies over a period of 200 years. And at the end of that period, there were only 600,000 men. A population of 1.5 million reduced to 600,000 over 200 years. That was slavery as a form of genocide. And we have to understand this. At emancipation, there were only 600,000 Africans left in the Caribbean from an imported population of 1.5 million. Slavery was meant to extract maximum labor at minimum cost with maximum profit. And the result of that was a disease culture and profile surrounding malnutrition. So malnourished African bodies in the Caribbean became diseased bodies. And most of the diseases that afflicted the Black population in the Caribbean were malnutrition-related diseases, and they ravished the Black population. Very high infant mortality rates, short lifespans. And when you read the records of individual plantations in the Caribbean, it's a litany of daily death. Not only the babies, the children, the young adults, but old age was considered to be 40. That was the age limit at which they were classified as aged and generally infirmed. The babies were not expected to live. Every African child that survived into adulthood was considered a miracle. The population, therefore, in the Caribbean experienced systemic decline. Much is made of the experience of Barbados, that Barbados was the one society that was able to produce a sustainable reproductive rate. But again, that is not true. 600,000 Africans were imported into the island of Barbados in chains. 600,000. At emancipation, there were 83,000 remaining. 83,000 from 600,000 after 200 years. Genocide, disease, population ravaged by disease. When it came to the 20th century, former Prime Minister of Britain, Lord George, made a statement in 1926 in which he said, the Caribbean is the slum of the British Empire, and explained that within the slum was a population that was riddled with ill health and disease. When the workers of the Caribbean rose up in revolt in the 1930s against colonialism, the British government sent out a commission of inquiry under the chairmanship of Lord Moyne. The Moyne report speaks to the extensive spread of disease and illness in the Black population, confirming what former Prime Minister Lloyd George had said. The Caribbean was described as a place that was riddled with diseases, largely because of poverty, hunger, malnutrition. It was not surprising, therefore, when the recommendation was made to establish a university in the Caribbean, in the English West Indies. And when that university was established in 1948, it was established as a medical school. That was not surprising. The reason they established the UWI as a medical school in 1948 was to repair the chronic illness and disease of the people of the region, because we were known to be a sick and disease-ridden people as a result of our history. And this is why we started as a medical school, to try to find solutions to the spread of polio, diphtheria, yellow fever, smallpox, malaria, and you can go on and on. And of course, the incipient evidence around the diabetes and the blood pressure challenges. So the UWI was established as the beginning of the search for a cure, a reversal, a repairing of the chronic ill health of the people of the Caribbean. Much work has been done to address this history. The issue around mental illness is only now being effectively addressed. The slavery and colonialism, large percentages of our people were driven into ill health, what was described by the colonialists as madness. That colonialism and its evil was about madness. Frantz Fanon, the brilliant Martinican psychiatrist, described this all very well in his many books, that how the colonial experience of the Black people of the Caribbean and also in Africa drove them into mental illness. The colonialists refused to accept this. They merely described it as madness and associated humor with madness. That people who were mad were to be laughed at. People who were mad were to be made subjects of comedy, a language. The madman and the mad woman on plantation, the madman and the mad woman walking the streets of the towns. They were to be blamed. They were to be seen as persons who could not handle their own stress levels and were driven into illness. But it was not described as illness. Madness was a feature of the colonial world, an expression of oppression and downpression. There was a refusal by the colonialists to see this as a subject worthy of scientific inquiry. It was merely dismissed as collateral damage from the colonial experience. And so mental illness that had always surrounded physical illness and infirmity were set aside as collateral damage. Much of our art and culture today, the performance of it, is about the search for self-healing. The art, the dance, the music, the literature, self-healing. A community seeking to heal itself through the use of its art. The comedians might very well say, we are mad, but we are not foolish, which juxtaposes the concept of disease and illness as opposed to self-victimization. And now we have the 3 C's before us, driving a wedge into the heart of the Caribbean. The 3 C's, chronic diseases, climate change, and COVID-19. And the COVID-19 has targeted precisely those people in the Caribbean who have diseases, those who are the victims of hypertension, diabetes from the history of plantation slavery, from the imposition of contemporary diet of excessive salt, the fast food culture exposed to our young people in recent decades, that together, the historical data and the contemporary expressions of the fast food culture have cascaded to create a cocktail of absolute destruction. COVID-19, attacking those with diabetes and hypertension, attacking those from the past. So those who are carrying diseases from the historical past are now coming face to face with the contemporary, the COVID-19 of today. This is the cocktail that has placed the Caribbean people in a very special position in relation to the history of the world. That yes, using this criterion, we are indeed the sickest people in the world. And in that context, we have a process of reparations to be engaged. I thank you for the generosity of your attention. I wish for everyone a productive and enjoyable symposium.